Morning, Reverend Quay. 5:26 in the morning. I'm not even alive yet. I'll wake you up for Thursday. It's the 6th of, actually, it's the 7th of November 2024, and I'm watching. The day after the elections happened, we started getting Santa Ana's kicking in, and automatically we got fires happening out here. We got fires happening out here. Oh, yeah, winds have already kicked up and started a blaze out in Ventura County. It's already chewing up some real estate and a lot of people's homes at this point. So basically, we're screwed. We're screwed this morning. I try to stay away from the news as much as possible, and besides, my streaming services are limited right now. Spectrum is still giving me hell because they can't. I can't work with a old computer. I need to get me a new one. I don't know where the hell I'm going to get me a new one. So if I'm going to be watching television, it's going to be on a pad from Amazon. Kind of sucks, but I have to deal with it. I didn't want to deal with that damn situation. I really didn't. I didn't want to hear about Trump going to be doing this. I already knew his game plan anyway. He lied about Project 2024, Project 2025. I know he's going to be doing it. I know the followers are going to be doing this. He may be a belligerent old fuddy-duddy here, just losing his brains and stuff. But I kept saying in my other videos, it's the lieutenants that you got to watch out for. These are the assholes that are going to be doing stuff. It's like watching Nazi Germany all over again. 1930s. Germany was in such a dire, devastated state that it took one lunatic to rally up the troops, fire up an industry, and begin a conquest. It's the lieutenants who actually took more of charge of everything else than the old firebrand did. And that's why we look at Trump. Trump's the figurehead. The real power is the schmucks who are wielding the damn thing. So yes, we have that going. I'm not feeling good about it. I'm not feeling at all happy about it. And there's not a damn thing I can do about it. I did my political stuff. I did my voting. Maybe I should have pushed the shit down people's throats. I wanted them to make up their own minds, but I talked to people on it. But now, not enough apparently. So now we are screwed. We are screwed. So now what do? We watch 2017 and 18, 19 and 20 play itself out. We're going to see the mid-elections, the midterms coming up, and we'll see if they're going to be keeping in the Trumps or the Trumplican thinking. We'll see what happens. Meanwhile, you know what this is going to mean for my education? I may not graduate. I'm going to be stuck. I may not be able to afford graduation. I don't know what happens to my disability at this point. I'm worried about that. If I could afford the college, I would. That's why I kept applying for the Pell Grants. And what if within the 2 year period they get rid of the Department of Education who approves the Pell Grants or limits them? Hence, I won't graduate. But at least I know I got a track record right now. I can order up the unofficial records and keep it for my files. That I did the best I could. I still had a long way to go. I still had more points to collect. I'm not giving up on it just yet. Not until they start putting a stop to the damn shit. Women are going to be affected left and right about their rights and everything else. We're going to see if there's going to be any fighting in among You can't just Actually, you just can't put an executive order from the White House to say that women no longer have a power of voting or anything. They want the states to do it. Well, the states can't legislate federal. And I don't know how their viewpoints on the federal are going to be affecting everyone else's rights one way or another. Or let alone the Pell Grants. Are they going to be affecting the curriculum? Am I going to have to start dealing with that one too? We're dealing with environmental catastrophes happening. We're dealing with our climate changes. We're dealing with deniers of anything and everything. Ignorance is bliss, oh Reverend. Ignorance is bliss. I was watching this 2-month-old posting of 20 something year olds that don't know shit from Shinola concerning about the space race. And I'm not pulling back on the language on that one. I'm 58 years old. I had barely understood what was going on regarding the space race. I didn't understand. Oh, sorry. On here, I got a computer going on. I got trying to keep track of houses still smoldering from the damn fire that's happening up in Ventura County. Losing track of things. Watching the fires gets me rattled myself. Losing access to things gets me rattled because I'm so damn used to it. And we're going to be screwed over the next 2, 3 years at this point. We're watching the fire yesterday. Horrifying things. KTLA, KCAL, uh, ABC 7, Fox 11. These guys are put into live streams if you want to see what's going on. I just had to stay away from this stuff, dealing with the politics. I was not exactly vegging out in the fire. I wanted to find out more about the fire. I kept talking to my therapist about this one. I was saying something about the Apollo Rodney. I was about 2.5, 3 years old, watching something walking on the moon. Didn't even understand what the hell it was. I was watching history. I didn't even understand what it was. I'm hearing about less and less when I was a kid about the lunar landings because I was getting more and more disinterested with the American public. Until finally they ran out of money and just canceled the program after 17 or 18. 17, I think. Used the surplus equipment to launch Skylab. And they're still doing the designing and engineering of the space shuttle program. And that I was awake for. And yes, during that time, we actually had a conservative base in that time. Back in the 80s, let's see, from 80 all the way through 88. We had Ronald Reagan wanting Star Wars. Supported NASA with the space shuttle because it could put up military satellites unless we actually had an alternate space shuttle program somehow. They were developing within the last 30 to 35 years. But just military cargo, not human. So this is the things I had to deal with. It was on the news concerning about the space shuttle all the damn time. And back in the late 60s, early 70s, it was about the Apollo program until all interest was gone. This was understand this. The space race originally from Mercury through Apollo was all political. I mean, they used scientific aspects and scientific elements, but it was all political. We had to beat the Russians to the moon. We had to make it political by putting an American flag on there. To lay sovereign claim to Russia that we were there first. I mean, they did first man in space, uh, a couple other things that they did. But they also had the first death in space as well for their own astronauts. They didn't exactly take the redundancies very well. Safety was not exactly the priority for these guys. Efficiency, yeah, but not safety. Sorry, something in my eye. So, and it's this stuff that's not taught to the youth. I mean, yeah, we have internet. They can look at the stuff, but they can also see that the stuff they're looking at is from someone else's fake crap. They don't believe the old astronauts. They think they're fake. Most of them are gone. Nearly all of them are gone. From the Mercury's are already gone. Gemini's gone, except for Buzz Aldrin, and he fights like hell. For an old man, he is very spry and very pissed every time somebody keeps saying that the lunar landing didn't happen. He went there. He wasn't first. He was the second man on the moon, but he was a surviving guy. Guy's earned his doctorate when he was going through NASA. Actually, before he went through NASA. A scientist in his own right. And he was doing calculations in Project Gemini that helped out Project Apollo. That helped out everybody. The guy's a genius. In his heyday, he was a genius. He was an engineer who knew his way around things. And he went on the moon. We got documentation. And the people still think it's CGI. They're so damn used to the new technology they couldn't understand what hell happened in the old technology. Shit. These guys are losing so much on history, it's not even funny. It's not even funny. I mean, shit. Talking about World War III, I was talking about that, right? Okay. Germany wanted something to lob rockets at people. Werner von Braun and his team created the V1 and V2 terror for London, for England. They used principles of Goddard. Goddard was the father of rocketry. Used principles of rocketry just to launch a very powerful bomb across the English Channel to destroy targets in London to cause terror. And sufficient enough rockets to do the job somewhere else. But when Germany lost and surrendered, the scientists had to go somewhere. The captured scientists, before their surrender, they had to go somewhere. They went to POW camps. And when we found out that they had knowledge, engineering skills, government said, "We'll take you." And we had our rockets. Granted, they were larger than life, testing different shapes, forms, fuels, to make sure we had something stable. Because when we heard that Russia launched Sputnik, the very first satellite with radio transmission capability, broadcasting a signal to the world saying, "Mother Russia did this," jig was up. we had to get the race going. We had to get the race going. And we figured next closest place to do it is the moon. If they had a lunar lander, they would have done it. But no, they were going to send people to the moon. They weren't going to do it in state. Well, actually, they did it in stages. A few solo missions in space, build up street cred, but not endurance, not the scientific stuff. That's why it took us time to do this, and we had sometimes rushed to jobs, and we didn't blow up anybody on the pad. We didn't blow up anybody in space during those days. No, we just had aeronautical issues. Test pilots crashing into something here and there. Not all of it by human error, but by forces of nature. That's what happened. And that being said, yes, we did launch 6 astronauts into space. One was going to be laid out because of heart issues. It was that last one that would make the last run with the Apollo equipment, the Apollo Soyuz, Deke Slayton. Everybody else got into the business. First, first team going into Mercury. Very few stayed with the program. One of them actually died in the program. Gus Grissom, God rest his soul. See, I remember watching stories, documentaries, reading books about this stuff, becoming book knowledgeable about it. I guess the mathematicians today are not up to speed on what our people, or actually the people back in the 50s and 60s, had to deal with. With the limited technology, they had to figure out, with slide rules and everything else, not with advanced computers. They really had to stretch their brains out, figuring out fuel consumption, trajectories, orbital plots. It took more physics than these kids are dealing with. They're lazy. Our kids are lazy. And because we've got social media out there, they got more and more lazier with their heads and their brains. You know the bitch about it is when we had to have telephones, mechanized monsters, a wall phone we had to run to all the time, or stretched out as a big machine, or big machine, and you had the dials, and then graduated into the buttons, but you still had to remember what the phone numbers were. People carried phone books with them all the time, and bank books. Keep track of the finances. Had to be disciplined. It's no wonder the conservatives these days like that kind of stuff better than the technology they got today. I can't say if they're right or not. I can't say if conservative in different areas are right or correct. But in order to get out there in space, in order to get out there, we need technicians. We need engineers. We need smart people. We need brilliant software engineers. We need mechanical engineers. We need to create the machines that'll be taking us beyond the Earth with better fuel sources or alternative fuel sources, even nuclear energy if it has to be, and explore. There was one show that I liked a really great deal on that one. It was Space 1999. Not the crazy stuff that I would see it in a part in year 2, but in year 1 sometimes. Not of just the space stuff, the entities or environments, maybe. But the premise of the show was They dealt with a nuclear war. They saw how devastating nuclear war was. They were getting proficient with nuclear energy to the point where it is that they said, no, we got to pull all our resources together. If we're going to save our planet, pull our resources together. And then the storylines were that there was an international community being built on space. Took them a decade or two to get the engineering, to get the right spaceships for this, to perfect it. Therefore, you had Space 1999. You had Moon Base Alpha, the first moon base, international, picked from dozens of countries, advanced degrees and stuff, to work on the moon, to engineer stuff on the moon, to make them more self-sufficient, grow their own food, produce their own power, recreate the water, that they didn't have to depend upon Mother Earth, except for transporting people up and back. I liked that show. I got older and I liked it more and more because I liked the concepts of it. The actors are gone, except for maybe one or two of them left. I think Nick Tate played Alan Carter. He's still alive. Barely, but he's still alive. Everybody else is gone. Catherine Shell, I think, still alive. She was on part two. But Nick Tate was year one. Everyone fell in love with the Eagle One space transporter. It looked like an ungainly machine, but the thing looked like it was working. Found a way to put nuclear fuel in it to where it was going through the mainframe external structure. I don't know how they would deal with the micrometeors. Maybe it was a lot stronger for the metals, we hoped. Even though windshields had to be stronger to deal with that. There was no gravity except for they created artificial gravity. I liked science fiction because sometimes they pushed the edge. When it comes down for politics, that's a different thing altogether. So I don't know what we're going to be doing with this in the next 4 years, if we're going to be surviving or not. So always a point to some of these videos here, especially when I have to make them more and more public on some things, and other things I keep more and more private. But this is public. I'm sorry I didn't come on Wednesdays because I was sleeping. I was so damn emotionally and physically wrecked from all this shit. As soon as I saw the figures, and they weren't adding up in my head, and I was seeing Trump getting more and more, Harris was going to have an impossibility. Maybe there would have been a miracle I could have waken up to, and now that's not there. She conceded. She's not going to challenge. American public has spoken. They want to be dumb and dumber, and they're going to be allowing a gas bag to rule them all. We're going to pay for it on every end of it. Not just the local, but the international as well. And it's going to affect us for centuries on this one. You ever see the show? Well, probably didn't. Firefly. Josh Whedon created this show. He's one of the creative forces out there that gets in controversy so much in Hollywood. One season caught on, and you have fans call themselves browncoats. What happened was, in its timeline, in its quote-unquote verse, Uh, the Chinese had overtaken and created a different lifestyle, created a different environment. So you would hear some of the language being used. But also, they would create their own empire of sorts. The brown shirts were the ones on the outer planets, out away from the influences of their government. They rebelled. They wore brown coats. Story opens up with a captain who fought in the war. The war was lost, and he had to survive on the outskirts. Gets himself a ship, gets himself a crew, and they do whatever it is they can do to make money, to survive. There's things that they would go through. Sometimes downright criminal, but other times it was against their evil empire of sorts. And it's like several years after the show died out because of one season and ratings and everything else happening to it. But it was popular among the fans. They had the movie called Serenity. It was supposed to be the conclusion to it. Somewhat of a conclusion. It took out a character or two. Cast member. But it was something to expand upon for more seasons, but they didn't do it. But it was trying to give something of the fans to explain a lot of things what happened in the television series, throw them in a movie, and then that was it. And they're still wanting more. The actors are too damn old to play the parts. Way too old. Such is life. Such is things. Life goes on, doesn't it? Yeah. Right now, I still got to worry about things happening here that are going to be terrifying me. I'm long winded, I know that. What I'm trying to get into right now is whether or not we still have a quiz for me to take, or am I too late on that one? Stuff I'll do tonight, get it done. And see the whole damn. Great. Part of the server to get into one particular aspect of it is having service connections. Which means I'm going to have problems trying to connect up to the internet. Aren't I going to have fun? Great. Which means everything else is crash and burned. Are we having fun yet, Rev? I'm not.